Dakori Daronita Ai Se Sambandha Nahija Brita Janma Gelota Se Sambandha Nahija Brita Janma Gelota Se Pashu Bododuracha Se Pashu Bododuracha Nityānanda bolilo mukhe Majilo samsara sukhe Nityānanda bolilo mukhe Majilo samsara sukhe Vidyakule Ikori Beta Vidyakule Ikori Beta Ahankare Matoya Nityāpada Pasariya Ahankare
Mataya Nityāpada
Pasariya Asatyare Satya Kori Mani
Asatyare Satya
Kori Mani Nityaya Karuna Habe Braje Radha Krishna Pabe Nityaya Karuna Habe Braje Radha Krishna Pabe Daro Nityaya Charanadu Tani
Dharanitai
Charanadu Tani Nityaya Charana Satya Tanhara Sevata Nitya
Nityaya
Nityaya
Nityāya
Charana
Charana Satya
Satya
Ahara Shiva
Sevata Nitya Nitai Pada Sadakoro Asha Nitai Pada Sadakoro Asha Narottama Boroduki Nitai More Korosuki
Narottama
Bharaduki
Nitai
Nitai
More
More
Korosuki
Korosuki Rakoranga Charanera Asha
Rakaranga
Charanera
Asha
Nitai Pada Kamala Koti Chandra Shushitala
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 Jai Jagata Jura
Nityāya
Srechaya Jagata Jiraya
Nityāya Jagata Juraya
Yechaya
Jagata
Jagata Jiraya.
Oops. Let's see. Sorry, I lost the screen. I'm sorry, give me a moment. I'm messing up here with the screen sharing. Okay. Translation. The lotus feet of Lord Nityānanda are a shelter where one will get the soothing moonlight, not only of one, but of millions of moons. If the world wants to have real peace, it should take shelter of Lord Nityānanda. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityānanda, it will be very difficult for him to approach Radha Krishna. If one actually wants to enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, he must firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityānanda. 2. Anyone who has not established his relationship with Nityānanda Prabhu is understood to have spoiled his valuable human birth. Such a human being is actually an uncontrollable animal. Because he never utters the holy name of Nityānanda, he has become merged into so-called material happiness. What can his useless education and family tradition do to help him? 3. Being maddened after false prestige and identification with the body, one is thinking, oh, what is Nityānanda? What can he do for me? I don't care. The result is that he is accepting something false to be truth. If you actually want to approach the association of Radha Krishna, you must first achieve the mercy of Lord Nityānanda. When he is merciful toward you, then you will be able to approach Radha Krishna. Therefore, you should firmly grasp the lotus feet of Lord Nityānanda. 4. The lotus feet of Nityānanda are not illusion. They are a fact. One who engages in the transcendental loving service of Nityānanda is also transcendental. Always try to catch the lotus feet of Lord Nityānanda. This Narottam Das is very unhappy. Therefore, I am praying to Lord Nityānanda to make me happy. My dear Lord, please keep me close to your lotus feet. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Shri Nityānanda Trayodaśī Ki Jai.
Jai.
And the verse, we'll read together this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. We covered this last year in the morning class in Philadelphia. I cannot remember exactly, but sometime last year. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. Oops, I have the wrong verse here. Give me a moment to fix this. Okay, Chapter 1, Canto 1, Chapter 3. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Text 23. Ekona vimshe vimshati me Vrishnishu prapya janmani Rama Krishna viti bhuvo Bhagavan aharad baram. I'll just, we'll skip doing it, everyone doing it, and we'll just move along. Word for word translation. Ekona Vimshe in the 19th. Vimshatime in the 20th also. Vrishnishu in the Vrishni dynasty. Prapya, having obtained. Janmani, births. Rama, Balaram. Krishna, Sri Krishna. Iti, thus. Bhuva, of the world. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Aharat, removed. Bharam, burden. Translation. In the 19th and 20th incarnations, the Lord advented himself as Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna in the family of Vrishni, the Yadu dynasty, and by so doing, he removed the burden of the world. Purport. The specific mention of the word Bhagavan in this text indicates that Balaram and Krishna are original forms of the Lord. This will be further explained later.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, we are not able to see.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, we are not able to see.
No, I
what
can
you-
see. I can
Oh, you're
see.
not seeing the
I mean, that note
verse?
I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't move it down. My mistake. Okay, there. I'm sorry.
So good. Thank you.
I'll start again the purport. The specific mention of the word Bhagavan in this text indicates that Balaram and Krishna are original forms of the Lord. This will be further explained later. Lord Krishna is not an incarnation of the Purusha, as we learned from the beginning of this chapter. He is directly the original personality of Godhead, and Balaram is the first plenary manifestation of the Lord. From Baladev, the first phalanx of plenary expansions, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna expands. Lord Sri Krishna is Vasudev, and Baladev is Sankarsana. Ekona Vimshe Vimshati me Vrishnishu Prapya Janmani Rama Krishna Viti Bhuvo Bhagavan Aharad Bharam. In the 19th and 20th incarnations, the Lord advented himself as Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna in the family of Vrishni, the Yadu dynasty, and by so doing, he removed the burden of the world. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschita Deshatarine. So, of course, appearance day of Lord Nityānanda, we always remember that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is directly Krishna himself, and Lord Nityānanda is directly Balaram himself. And this verse, which is part of the whole list in the first canto of all the appearance of the Lord, explains that this Krishna and Balaram, very significant, they're mentioned together as Bhagavan. Rama Krishna iti bovo Bhagavan. They're both Bhagavan. We know the Ete Chamsa Kala Pumsam, Krishna's too Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's Avatari, the source of all avatars. And the very, very first, very, very closest, most intimate, most immediate expansion of all of those avatars is Lord Balaram. So close that practically no difference. Prabhupada said, Krishna is blackish and Balaram is whitish, otherwise there's no difference. So this is how we understand Bhagavan. This is how we understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Absolute Truth is one, non-dual. Eka Brahma, Dvitiya Nasti, that the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Absolute Truth is one. Dvitiya Nasti, there's no second. There's just one. He's the one supreme existence, the Supreme Absolute Truth. And yet, that one supreme existence expands into many, into the the many varieties of the spiritual world, the many varieties of the material world. This is explained nicely in a purport in the third canto. I'll read this. Third canto, chapter 5, text 51 from the purport. The Lord is one without a second, and he expands himself into many for his transcendental pleasure. All the expansions, the Vishnu tattvas, the Jiva tattvas, and the Shakti tattvas, that is the personality of Godhead, the living entities, and the different potential energies, are different offshoots from the same one Supreme Lord. The Jiva tattvas are separated expansions of the Vishnu tattvas. And although there are potential differences between them, they are all meant for the transcendental sense gratification of the Supreme Lord. Some of the Jivas, however, want to lord it over material nature in imitation of the lordship of the personality of Godhead. Regarding when and why such propensities overcame the pure living entities, it can only be explained that the Jiva tattvas have infinitesimal independence and that due to misuse of this independence, some of the living entities have become implicated in the conditions of cosmic creation and are therefore called Nityābaddhas, or eternally conditioned souls. So the Supreme Absolute Truth is one. He's the one Supreme Absolute Truth. One means all that exists is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one without a second also means that he has no competitor. He's number one, and there's no second place. Second place is so infinitely far back, there's no second place. He's the word used, Prabhupada would use, is asamordva, asama ordva, that no one is equal to him and no one is greater than him. So he's one, but because the nature, what's the nature of the absolute truth? Sat Chit Ananda. Sat, he exists eternally, uncontaminated, pure spirit. He exists eternally. Sat. Chit, he's a living being. He's a person with full consciousness, with full awareness, with full knowledge. And Ananda, his nature is to be composed of bliss and to produce constant, unlimited, ever-increasing bliss. And bliss is only fully manifested through variety. Therefore, the Supreme Lord, who is one, Eka Brahma Dvitiya Nasti, also becomes many, which is, what's that? Eka Bahu Syam is the Vedic injunction. Eka Bahu Syam, that the one became many for the sake of his pleasure, for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as Vaishnavas, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas specifically, we understand both of these, that the Supreme Absolute Truth, oneness, is reality, and the variety of him expanding through his, Prabhupada mentions Vishnu Tattva, Jiva Tattva, Shakti Tattva, through all of his avatars, expansions, through we living entities and through his material nature. That expansion of variety and multiplicity, that is also reality. And we need to understand both of these and embrace both of these components simultaneously. And if we can't do that, then we can't understand devotional service very perfectly. And if we can't embrace both of them, then we can't understand Radha Krishna, because Radha and Krishna are one and different. What's that? Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladini Shaktir Asmat Ekatmanav Api Bhuvi Bhuva Pura Deha Beda Gato To. That the Supreme Absolute Truth, Radha and Krishna together, their existence and their pastimes is fully under the Ladini Shakti, under the spiritual pleasure energy of the Lord. And they are actually one in nature, but for the sake of their pastimes, they've become two. So without a Chinta Beta Beta, we cannot understand Radha Krishna. And also without a Chinta Beta Beta, we cannot understand Krishna Balaram or Gaur Nitai. Because as Radha and Krishna is Krishna and his closest, most intimate, most loving first expansions of his Shakti Tattva. So Balaram and Nityānanda is similarly the first, most intimate, most loving, closest expansion of his Vishnu Tattva. So Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva allows us to understand this. And when we understand this, then we're on our way to understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is why in the description of the very topmost devotee, how is the most topmost devotee described in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto? Sarva bhuteshu ya pashyed bhagavad bhavamatmana bhutani bhagavat matman atman yesha bhagavatotama. That the Bhagavat Ottama, the very topmost devotee, he's fully engaged in devotional service, but what's his vision? Sarva bhuteshu ya pashyed. How does he see all living entities? That Bhagavad bhavamatmana bhutani bhagavatyatmana. That all of the living entities are existing within Krishna, and Krishna is existing within all of the living entities. Therefore, the topmost devotee sees Krishna everywhere because he understands Krishna's simultaneously oneness and variety. And therefore, I read this Bhagavatam verse today. That's how we understand Krishna and Balaram. They're one, but they're different, and they're different for a purpose. And that purpose is for the expansion of Krishna's pleasure pastimes. And Krishna Balaram is the same thing. Krishna himself is pure bliss, but that bliss is increased with the expansion of his most intimate avatar as Balaram, as his elder brother. And even we living entities, were expansions of his energy also for the same reason, to expand Krishna's Ladini Shakti. So therefore, as we worship Radha Krishna, in every temple we worship Radha Krishna. Prabhupada would always say Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, Lakshmi Nrsimha, that the Lord is always worshipped like that, with Rukmini Dwarkadish, the Lord with his energy. And similarly, we worship Krishna and his different avatars, just like yesterday we celebrated Varaha's appearance. And we understand this is also avatar of Krishna. Therefore, when we're worshiping Lord Varaha, we're also worshiping Krishna. And when we're appreciating Balaram, we're appreciating Krishna. And we know that Krishna Balaram is directly same as Gaur Nitai. What's that? Brajendra Nandana Jai, Sachi Sutta Hoilo Se, Balaram Hoilo Nitai. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is directly Krishna himself. Brajendra Nandana, the son of Nandaraj, the king of Vraja, who is Krishna, is directly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Balaram Hoilo Nitai. And Balaram is directly Lord Nityānanda himself. So we need to understand this. I remember long ago, some years back, when I first moved into the temple in Long Island, New York. And at that time, I was actually a little bit familiar with, some Indian culture and Indian practices and Hindu culture. I had been, studying such things for a while, and I had spent some time in a Indian ashram, not in India, in America, but run by a different Indian group. So I was a little familiar with Indian culture, and I went into the Long Island temple, and I went into the temple, and I bowed down and I looked at the deities, and I was bewildered because I thought, this is the Hare Krishna movement. They're worshiping Radha Krishna. But I'm looking at the deities, and I said to the devotee next to me, I was brand new in the temple, I said, what's this? Who are they? They're both men, it looks like. And I thought you're supposed to worship Radha Krishna. And then he explained to me that those deities were Nimai Nitai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityānanda. And he started explaining to me about the appearance and the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityānanda. So that was the beginning of my education. And I've come some way since then, and I still have a long way to go to understand this. But this is how we begin to understand Krishna and all of his expansions, like Radha Krishna, Krishna Balaram, and Gaur Nitai. And they're inseparable. You can't understand one without the other. Just like before, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir, Ladini Shaktir Asmat. That they're one, Ekatmanav, they're one, but they've become separate for the sake of those loving pastimes. And same thing, Krishna Balaram, same thing, Gaur Nitai. Prabhupada once in a morning walk, he said, when the body is similar, but the color of the body is different, that is called Vaibhav. Just like Balaram, Krishna's body and Balaram, there's no bodily difference. But Krishna is blackish, Balaram is whitish. These things are described in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Why don't you read it? So just as Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself come with the mood and with the complexion of Radhika, Radha Bhava Jyoti Suvalitam. He's Nomi Krishna Swarupam. He's directly Krishna himself, but with the complexion and the mood of Radhika. So similarly, Lord Nityānanda is directly Balaram himself. And just as we can't understand Krishna without worshiping Radha Krishna, we can't fully understand Krishna or appreciate Krishna without that. We also can't approach Radha and Krishna without appreciating Gaur Nitai, without the mercy of Lord Nityānanda. So, as I said, Krishna expands into all these different expansions, beginning with Balaram in Vishnu Tattva and Radhika in Shakti Tattva, for the purpose of his pleasure, but also for the purpose of engaging everyone, including us and including all the conditioned souls, engaging them in his service. We know it said, Ekala Ishwara Krishna, Arasa Britya, Yare Yaiche Nachaya, Se Taiche Kare Nritya. That Ekala Ishwara Krishna, Krishna is the one, the only controller and Lord and supreme person and supreme enjoyer, Arasa Britya, and everyone else. That means everyone, every other creation is meant to be his servant. Yare Yaiche Nachaya. And he makes them dance, Se Taiche Kare Nritya, and they all dance in the way he makes them dance. So Krishna is the master and everyone else is the servant. And that is even more specifically explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the early chapters. Bhakta Abhiman Mula Shri Balarame Se Bhave Anugata Tanra Amsagane. Bhakta Abhiman means the mood of being the devotee, of being the servant. Mula Shri Balaram, the root of that expression, that mood, that understanding of being the servant of Krishna comes from Balaram. He's the first expansion. That also means he's the first servant. Bhakta Abhiman Mula Shri Balaram. Lord Balaram is the origin and the source of the mood of being the servant, of being the devotee of Krishna. Se Bhave Anugata Tanre Amsagana. And all of the other different expansions, Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, are all following in his footsteps in this mood of being the servant. This is why sometimes we say that Balaram is the original guru, because he's the origin of the mood of being the devotee. And everyone is following in his footsteps to do that, to learn that, to live that, being the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And just as to properly understand Radha Krishna Leela, we need to understand the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So similarly, in order to understand Radha Krishna Leela, and in order to understand the position of Mahaprabhu, we need the mercy of Lord Nityānanda. So essential, cannot be discounted. Krishnadas Kaviraj, in his earlier years before he wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita, he had one quarrel with his brother. It said, he describes that his brother had Sudrida Bishwas. Sudrida Bishwas means his brother had very firm faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He had extremely firm faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but his brother had Bishwas Abbas, which means just very faint faith or very weak faith, meager faith, or just a shadow or a reflection of faith in Lord Nityananda. And this was intolerable to Krishnadas Kaviraj. And he told his brother, what you're doing, this is called Ardha Kukuti Nyaya. We've all heard this before, Ardha Kukuti Nyaya. This means the logic of the half a hen. And we all know the example that if you have a hen and you're thinking, oh, this hen, I have to feed the front half. What a bother. I have to spend money for feed. And I get eggs out of the back half. And that's good. That's for my profit. So let me cut the chicken in half and I'll only take the back half and get the eggs. And I don't have to worry about feeding the front half. So of course, if you do that, the entire chicken is lost. So he explained, if you're worshiping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but neglecting Nityananda, this is like this half a hen philosophy. And actually, it's so offensive that it would be better if you were an atheist. It would be better if you were a Pashundi and rejected both of them than to neglect Lord Nityananda like that. And the result of neglecting Lord Nityananda is sarvanash. You will fall down. Everything will be lost. All of your spiritual life will be lost and destroyed if you neglect Lord Nityananda. Even you worship Krishna, you worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but if you neglect Nityananda, then you're lost. Better to be an atheist rather than a hypocrite who worships one and neglects the other. So this is Lord Nityananda. His existence, his appearance is so vital, cannot be stressed enough, that his mercy is so, excuse me, our advancement is so, what's the word I'm looking, incumbent on, so dependent on understanding and worshiping and getting the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And it's hard to remember that every single day, but today is a day when we should remember that. So now I'll share some of the different pastimes and activities and incidents in the life of Lord Nityananda. First, there's his appearance. He was born in the village of Ācārya. I never went there. Some of the devotees may be there. I think my wife visited Ācārya on her last visit to India. And his father was named Hadai Oja or Hadai Pandit, and his mother was Padmavati, and he was their only son. And those parents loved him so much. He was constantly on their mind. His father would never go anywhere without him, whether he was bathing or meeting people or shopping or whatever he was doing. He would always take his son Nityananda with him and walk with him and carry him and hold him and hug him and kiss him. And they were inseparable. And even if he was walking somewhere, and if Nityananda fell a few steps behind, his father would immediately turn around and wait for him. Oh, come, my son. So it was so close. They were so close, that family. So when Nityananda was still young, only 12 years old, and the pastimes of his childhood, I'll sum them up in that almost exclusively his pastimes were that Lord Nityananda would gather all of his friends, all of his childhood friends, and they would enact in plays, in dramas, all of the pastimes of Krishna, all of the Bhagavatam pastimes of Krishna, from the 10th canto, killing the demons and rasa dance and all of these. They would do Ram Leela, and when they did Ram Leela, Lord Nityananda would always take the part of Lakshman and enter into very deep ecstasy, because of Lakshman is also an expansion from that original Balaram and another appearance of the brother of the Supreme Lord as Ram. And they would pursue pastimes from all of the Bhagavatam, all the different avatars and incarnations, perform all the pastimes constantly and enter into such deep ecstasy doing this. But then when he was still young, only about 12 years old, this incident occurred. And this is all taken from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. One day, by divine arrangement, a sannyasi with a divine appearance visited Lord Nityananda's house. Hadai Pandit welcomed him and looked after him very nicely with great pleasure. Lord Nityananda's father spent the whole night with the sannyasi talking about Krishna and his pastimes. As he was preparing to leave early the next morning, the sannyasi asked Nityananda's father, "I have one request." Hadai Pandit replied, "Whatever you desire, you may have." The sannyasi said, "I am on a pilgrimage tour, but I do not have a good brahmana as a companion. Give me your eldest son for a few days to be my companion. I will protect and look after him with my life, and your son will also be able to learn about the many places of pilgrimage we visit." The sannyasi's words greatly perturbed Hadai Pandit, who was a pure and pious brahmana. Fraught with worries, he became weak and thought, "The sannyasi has begged for my very life, and I feel that if I refuse, then I will be ruined. Great personalities previously have offered even their lives to fulfill the desire of a sage or renunciate. In the Puranas, we read that Lord Ramachandra was dearer to his father Dāsa than his own self. Once the sage Vishwamitra begged Dāsa to allow his son to come with him. It was very painful for Dāsa to be apart from his son, Lord Ramachandra, yet he did not refuse. I feel myself to be in the same predicament. O Lord Krishna, please guide me and protect me in this dilemma. By divine arrangement, I have to take the position of Dāsa, and my son is taking the position of Lord Ramachandra. Otherwise, why is this all happening around my son? Moreover, Nitai already has such an air of material detachment about him." Hadai Pandit then went inside to consult his wife. The chaste Padmavati, the universal mother, heard everything from Hadai Pandit and said, "Whatever you decide, my lord, is my decision too." Hadai Pandit returned to the sannyasi and put his son in his custody. He stood there crestfallen with his head hanging down, and Lord Nityananda left with the sannyasi. In this way, Lord Nityananda was able to leave his house. As soon as Lord Nityananda left, Hadai Pandit crumbled to the ground unconscious. He wept bitterly in separation from his beloved son and Lord. His piteous cries could even melt a heart of stone. Overwhelmed with intense love in separation from the Lord, Hadai Pandit appeared to be in a state of total shock. He went about just like a statue. The people said, "Hadai Oja has become mad." For 3 months, Hadai Pandit stopped eating entirely. However, unlike ordinary human beings, he did not die or become emaciated. He remained alive simply by his attachment for the Supreme Lord. So this is the love of Hadai Pandit and Padmavati for their son, and yet Nityananda has a mission as the most intimate servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He has a mission, and this is how that mission is just beginning to be initiated. When he was only 12 years old, and he wandered around for the next 20 years. Because remember, Nityananda, I don't remember the exact age difference, but he's older than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So for 20 years, Lord Nityananda wandered with that sannyasi, and then later on his own. He wandered all over India, always wherever he went, in complete, blissful, ecstatic love of Krishna. But he wasn't preaching to anyone. He was simply absorbed in ecstasy, wandering to all of the holy places, and he wandered all over India from top to bottom, from east to west. He went everywhere. One time in the course of those travels, he happened to meet another sannyasi, Madhavendra Puri. Now we know Madhavendra Puri is so important in our line. He's the origin of spontaneous, at least teaching it within our sampradaya. He's the origin of teaching this spontaneous love of the Brijavasis. And Madhavendra Puri's disciple was Ishwara Puri, who went on to become the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one time in his wanderings, he met Madhavendra Puri, who was touring with a bunch of his disciples. And this is described. Madhavendra Puri said, "Nowhere have I found the presence of such unlimited transcendental love as in Lord Nityananda. Wherever that love is to be found becomes my favorite place of holy pilgrimage. I am now convinced that the blessed Lord Sri Krishna is graciously disposed towards me because I have found an intimate associate like Lord Nityānanda. Wherever one meets Lord Nityānanda, that place becomes the most holy place. The transcendental planets of Vaikuntha descend and are present there. Whoever associates with Lord Nityānanda and hears from him will surely attain the purest devotional service at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And whoever harbors even a tinge of apathy for Lord Nityānanda is forever cast aside by Lord Krishna, even though he may be in the guise of a devotee. So this appreciation of Lord Nityānanda from such a stalwart and important Vaishnava in our line, also connected with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through his disciple Ishwara Puri, is giving us more information how amazing Lord Nityānanda is. That he's so absorbed in this mood, Bhakta Abhiman, so absorbed in this mood of being the devotee. Just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and his mood, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he came in the mood of a devotee, Radha Bhava Juti Suvlitam. He came in the mood and the complexion of Radhika. So Nityānanda is also Balaram. He's also Sankarshan. He's also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And yet he's so absorbed in this mood of being the servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the devotee of Krishna, completely absorbed in it. And everywhere he went, he was completely absorbed in ecstasy, crying and passing out. And especially, eventually, he went to Vrindavan, and he spent a long time in Vrindavan. And he was in such ecstasy there, but he was not preaching. He was simply absorbed in that ecstasy. And it's described that he was waiting. Remember, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was quite a bit younger than Nityānanda. So Nityānanda was waiting for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to start his Sankirtan movement and to start his active preaching, because he didn't feel it right to start preaching before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He felt it was improper, disrespectful for him to preach in place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he was waiting for the Lord's, although he wasn't there, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows what's going on. He was waiting for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan pastimes to begin. And actually in that segment of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati comments that Lord Nityānanda did not dare to preach separate from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or previous to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he went on, similarly, there are many people who take up the guise of devotees and take up the position of guru and big preacher, but they should not dare to do that without the blessing and under the protection of Krishna and the proper Vaishnava spiritual master, not to do it independently. So nothing is done independently. Then finally, back in Navadvip, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he got married, then his wife died, he got married again. And then gradually he gave up his scholarly ways. It was after he came back from offering Pinda to his father in where is it in Bihar where he went to offer oblations to his father at the lotus feet of Vishnu?
Is it Goya, Prabhu Goya?
Gaya, yes, thank you, yes, Gaya. And when he came back, then the Sankirtan movement really started in earnest, with serious preaching. And then Nityānanda knew, this is the time for me to join my Lord. And at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also knew what was happening. And he told all of his devotees, sort of speaking in secret and in code, he said, in a few days, a great, great soul will be arriving here. But he didn't explain who it was or what was happening. But Nityānanda started coming, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knew he was coming. And then finally, after some time, Nityānanda arrived in Navadvip. And he didn't announce himself. He came to the house of one very great devotee, Ācārya. who was a great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was staying with that Nanda and Ācārya, but no one else knew. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu woke up one morning and he told all of his associates, oh, I had a great dream last night. I saw a big, beautiful chariot. And on that chariot, there was a flag. And on the flag was the image of the palm tree. We know that the palm tree is the emblem on the chariot of Lord Balaram. He said, so I saw this chariot with the flag of a palm tree. And the person standing on that chariot was so wonderful. And he was very big and strong and so beautiful and golden in complexion and so attractive to look at and so suffused with Krishna Prem. And on his shoulder, he had a huge mushala, a huge, like a club or a staff on his shoulder. And he carried it. So this person, this great soul, has come to Navadvip. And he kept on saying, where is that person? Where is that person? And all of his disciples, all of his associates went all over Navadvip to find Nityānanda where he was. But none of them could find him. None of them could understand who he was or where he was. And then finally, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself took all of them to the house of Nanda and Ācārya. And at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityānanda finally met. And the description is so ecstatic. They embraced and they fell on the ground and they were both perspiring and in tears and chanting, and just a scene of, the coming together of Chaitanya and Nitai was just so beautiful and so emotional. And then all of the devotees could understand this is Nityānanda, and what an amazing person he was and what an important person he was. And then with Nityananda's assistance, the Sankirtan movement started exploding. And there are so many, of course, the most famous is Jagai and Madai. That distribution of mercy is dependent on Lord Nityananda. So just like that, Lord Nityananda's appearance and his relationship with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his very embodiment of being a devotee of Radha Krishna and being a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is why we have to become followers of Lord Nityananda. If we do that, then our entrance into Krishna consciousness becomes much easier and much more natural. And just like Jagai and Madai, they were only able to get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after they got the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Without the mercy of Lord Nityananda, Jagai and Madai would have been destroyed. But by his mercy, they were saved. And of all of us, in one degree or another, are like Jagais and Madais. And we've come this far, so far, by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, by the mercy of Krishna and all of his expansions and all of his devotees who have adopted that mood of Bhakta Abhiman, of being the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also Srila Prabhupada has also accepted that mood of Bhakta Abhiman, which originates in Lord Balaram, which originates in Lord Nityananda. Therefore, he went to Vrindavan and he was insistent to start a Krishna Balaram temple, which was not the standard that one might expect. One might expect, oh, Vrindavan temple, you have Radha Krishna, but he insisted Krishna Balaram. So finally, we started off singing that beautiful song, Nitai Pada Kamala. This is a little excerpt from Prabhupada speaking on this song, giving not a translation, but a purport of that song. So I'll read that little bit. This is Prabhupada explaining the song Nitai Pada Kamala. He says, without becoming Brahman, one cannot approach the Supreme Brahman. Just like without being fire, nobody can enter into the fire. Without being water, nobody can enter into the water. Similarly, without being fully spiritualized, nobody can enter into the spiritual kingdom. So, Nityānanda Charana Satya. If you catch Nityānanda, the lotus feet of Nityananda, then you become immediately spiritualized. Just like if you touch electricity, immediately you become electrified. That is natural. Similarly, Nityānanda is eternal happiness. If you touch Nityānanda some way or other, then you become also eternally happy. Tanhara sevaka nitya. Therefore, one who is in contact with Nityānanda, they have also become eternal. Nityāyar charana satya, tanhara sevaka nitya, dridha kori daro nityarpai. So just catch him very tightly. So this is the message, the mood, the process on Nityānanda, at the very least, on Nityānanda Trayodaśī. And of course, we understand today's Nityānanda Trayodaśī. So I'm preaching about Nityānanda, and we're all meditating on Nityānanda and his pastimes. And yesterday, we're hearing about Dvaraha. And then in a short time, we'll be hearing about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then when Radhastami comes, we focus on Radhika. So all of these different things are there. But at least on this day, if not all the time, we remember Nityānanda, we pray to Nityānanda. Dridha kori daro nityarpai, and so as tightly as we can, grab onto those two lotus feet of Nityānanda. Nityāyar charana satya, the lotus feet of Lord Nityānanda. Prabhupada says they are true, they are truth. Satya also means eternal, and eternal goodness and transcendence. Just like very beginning of Bhagavatam says, Param Satyam Dhimahi, we meditate on the supreme absolute truth. So Lord Nityananda's lotus feet are also that object of meditation on the supreme absolute truth. And if you do that, just like Prabhupada says, just like if you touch electricity, you become electrified. If you want to enter into the fire, then you need a fiery body. If you want to enter into water, you need a watery body. So similarly, Nityāyar charana satya, tanhara sevaka nitya. As Lord Nityananda is eternal bliss, Prabhupada says, where is it? Nityananda is eternal happiness. This is the literal translation of Nityananda. Nityānanda means unending eternal happiness, eternal spiritual happiness. So Nityāyar charana satya, tanhara sevaka nitya. And the servant of Lord Nityananda also becomes similarly eternal. Just like if you touch the electric source, you become electrified. If you, Nityāyar charana satya, tanhara sevaka nitya, the servant of Nityananda also partakes in that eternal bliss of bhakta abhiman, of being the servant of Krishna, a bliss that is so amazing and so intense and so eternal and ever increasing, that when Krishna sees that bliss in his devotees in Vrindavan, he's feeling bereft. That my devotees are experiencing this amazing bliss, but I can't experience it because I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so I can't taste their position. And therefore, he comes as Lord Nityananda. And then, he comes as Lord Chaitanya. And with him comes Lord Nityananda to make this bliss of Bhakta Abhiman, of the mood of being the devotee available to everyone. Tanhara Sevaka Nitya, the servant becomes just as blissful, just as eternal as Lord Nityananda himself. Therefore, Dridha kori daro nityarpai. Dridha kori, you clasp those feet so tightly and you never let them go. And you become as spiritual and as blissful and as liberated and as perfect in the footsteps of Lord Nityananda. And then you could understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and become the perfect devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then you could understand all of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna and become a perfect devotee in every respect. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody, for your very kind attention. All glories to Lord Nityananda. If there's any questions or comments or discussion, we can do that now for a little while. I know there's more festivities at is there going to be a temple program there today, or is that being deferred until Sunday?
This evening at 6 o'clock it starts.
Okay.
And it'll go from about 6 o'clock to 8:30 tonight.
Awesome. Wish I could be there.
Yeah. I wish you were here too. Tim.
So I spoke with something that'll hopefully be a little reminder, and all day long we could chant bhajans and read and hear and remember, and then tonight a nice program. So keep the remembrance going. Any questions or discussion?
Thank you, Prabhu, so much. Wish
Hare
you
Krishna.
all
My
very
pleasure.
this Lord Nityananda's appearance day. I feel even the Lord Chaitanya's incarnation is called Channavatara, very difficult to understand.
Ah.
But more difficult to understand is Lord Nityananda. Just like more difficult to understand Balaram Tattva, more difficult, furthermore difficult to understand Lord Nityananda. I don't know if you agree with that or not. From all these other great devotees also, they freak out seeing Lord Nityananda's behavior. One is he's mad in Krishna Prema, and the other side he's a Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's giving freely this mercy, but it's very difficult for the people to accept and understand that kind of character. How will we then at the same time we have to take shelter of him and seek blessings, and without his mercy we cannot get Krishna Prema. So how will we when we can understand Lord Nityananda, and how is it possible?
Well, he is difficult to understand in one sense, more difficult to understand. But with that increase in difficulty, also there's an increase in mercy. So that the increase in mercy makes it possible for us to understand even these very esoteric and confidential, like what Bhagavad Gita calls confidential, more confidential, most confidential. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who can understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? But he's so merciful that he came and to teach us by his example how to become a devotee. And Lord Nityānanda is teaching by his example also how to be a preacher, how to be a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how to be merciful to the conditioned souls. So yeah, it's difficult. It's all difficult. Everything is difficult. But there's enough mercy if we take it. Dridha Kori Daron Nitarpai, if we cling on tightly enough, there's sufficient mercy to carry us through both the difficulty of the understanding as well as my unlimited shortcomings. The mercy is able to overcome that. It's Prabhupada in a couple of places, he discusses that there's two kinds of realization. There's Sugyeya and Durgyeya. Sugyeya means easy realization, and Durgyeya means difficult realization. So he said impersonal realization is actually Sugyeya. It's easy. It's simple. You just negate. There's not much to it, actually. Actually, it's nice in, I think it's Jiva Goswami's Bhagavat Sandarbha, or one of the Sandarbhas. He says, Brahman is the undifferentiated spiritual energy. And he says, and anyway, because it has no qualities and no attributes and no activities, there's not much to say about it. So we're done speaking about Brahman. And like in one or two verses, he like finishes the whole thing. So this is Sugyeya, but understanding Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all of his expansions and becoming his servant. This is Durgyeya. This is actually more difficult, and more difficult because it takes the reversing of our corrupt mentality, which is why we left the spiritual world in the first place, and which has been reinforced over countless lives in the material world. So it's actually more difficult. But at the same time, that more difficult thing has been made so easily available because of mercy, because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. There's that nice story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying that I have this nice garden with so many fruits, delicious sweet fruits, and it's producing so much. After all, how much can I enjoy myself? So I have so many fruits, but I want to distribute them freely to everyone. But to distribute all of these fruits, which are so unlimited, to all of the people in the world who are also so unlimited, I need all of the assistance of all of my devotees. Help me distribute these fruits of love of God. So it's the most difficult thing that someone like myself, to become a devotee to whatever a limited amount I've become a devotee so far is almost literally unbelievable, except that Prabhupada was so merciful that he wrote his books. He left India at advanced age. He came here and he preached with such humor and patience and determination that even like when he also wrote that nice poem when he came to Boston, "You've sent me to this terrible place in the modes of ignorance and passion. How can I preach? How can I save these people? How can I preach to these people? I'm counting on you, Krishna, to make my words suitable for their understanding." So it is the most difficult thing. It's harder than learning another language. It's harder than learning to be a brain surgeon. At the same time, it's also, in the ultimate sense, the most natural and the most easy thing. The difficulty is overcoming our resistance and our conditioning. And it's the mercy of Prabhupada and the mercy of Nityānanda and all the Ācāryas that allows us to do that. Anything else? Question or comment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu,
Thank you. You're welcome. Hare
for the
Krishna.
sweet pastimes. It was so nice to hear.
Yeah,
Thank you.
a lot of beautiful pastimes of Lord Nityānanda. He's quite incredible. And funny pastimes also. He's very fond of joking. I didn't get into that, but in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's so many nice instances of him being joking and funny with Advaita Ācārya joking, and with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a lot of joking words, beautiful pastimes. And they're beautiful in their own right. And they also help us fall in love with Lord Nityānanda and enable us to more and more hold on to his lotus feet. But yes, a lot of amazing, beautiful pastimes. Okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everybody, for your kind attention. I very deeply appreciate you tuning in and listening and giving me the opportunity to speak. Even though I'm not in Philadelphia anymore, my heart is always filled with remembrance of the devotees and Radha Sharad Bihari and Jagannath and all the nice activities and preaching and feasts there. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna. Nityānanda ki jai. Everybody have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Ācārya.